They told me the Empress of the Velhari Reach had no use for a human medic. Her own surgeons, 12 of them in layered white robes with instruments I couldn't name, had been managing her recovery for 6 days. I was attached to the diplomatic escort as a courtesy, a gesture toward the peace talks, a way for the colonial assembly to say, "We care enough to send our people." I wasn't supposed to be necessary. Then the fever came. It arrived on the 7th morning like something that had been waiting. I heard the commotion before I reached the medical wing, low, urgent voices in Velhari, the sharp percussion of metal instruments being set down too quickly. When I pushed through the second door, the 12 surgeons were standing in a cluster near the far wall. Not working. Standing. The Empress lay on the recovery platform in the center of the room, and every one of her physicians had stepped back. Her name was Saravan D. Haloreth, and she was the most powerful sovereign in the Reach. She was also, in that moment, shaking. I crossed the room. Nobody stopped me, because nobody moved at all. I had learned enough about Velhari culture in 3 months of transit to know what the stillness meant. They believed the fever was a spiritual judgment. To intervene was to argue with it. To argue with it was a kind of blasphemy. I was not Velhari. I pulled a chair to the side of the platform and sat down and opened my kit. Her skin was the deep blue-black of deep ocean water under starlight, and the fever had bleached the undertone out of it, made it look almost gray. Her hair, silver-streaked dark, braided tight against her skull for the journey, had come half loose and lay across the pillow like something spent. Her eyes were amber. I had noticed them at the first diplomatic reception, the way they moved across a room as if cataloging everything. Now they were fixed on the ceiling, glassy and too bright. I started with the temperature, then the blood pressure. Then I drew a small sample and fed it to the portable analyzer I was never supposed to need. I worked methodically, and I kept my hands steady, and I did not look up at the 12 surgeons still arranged along the wall. "You are the human medic," she said. Her voice was ragged but precise. Velhari spoke with extraordinary economy, no wasted syllables. "Yes, Your Eminence. My surgeons believe you are wasting your time." They may be right. I wasn't being modest. I was being honest. I had no idea yet what was happening in her blood, but I'd rather find out. She was quiet for a moment. The analyzer beeped softly. I looked at the readout. The values were strange, not alarming by the metrics I knew, but the interaction between 2 of the compounds her surgeons had administered was producing a third compound her body didn't know how to process. It was a subtle thing, the kind of thing you'd miss if you were deep inside one medical tradition and couldn't see its edges. I could see the edges. I was entirely outside it. I reached into my kit for a binding agent, something mild, something that would give her body a handhold while it cleared. I checked the cross-reactivity twice because I was working with physiology I didn't fully understand, and there was exactly one chance to get this right. "Why did you stay?" she asked. I looked up. Her amber eyes had found me now, not glassy anymore, sharp, even through the fever, watchful in the way I had noticed at the reception. "I'm sorry." My surgeons withdrew. "The protocol of the Reach requires it. You are a guest here. You owe nothing to this outcome. Why did you stay in the room?" I thought about that for a moment. "Because you were sick and I knew how to help," I said. "That's the whole reason." She looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully read. The Velhari face was different enough from a human face that I had spent weeks learning to calibrate. What I read now was something between confusion and attention, the look of a person who had been handed an answer that didn't fit any category they had prepared. "That is not a sufficient reason," she said, "by the customs of the Reach. My condition is a private matter of state. A sovereign's illness is not a public problem for a foreign guest to resolve." "I'm not resolving it publicly," I said. "There are 13 people in this room, and 11 of them are already here." Something shifted in her face. Not a smile. Velhari didn't smile the way I did, or at least not yet, but a slight change in the set of her eyes. I felt it more than saw it. You speak with economy, she said. I try. I administered the binding agent. The dosage was conservative. I wanted to see how she responded before I committed to anything stronger. I sat back in the chair and watched the monitors. Outside the windows of the medical wing, the planet's second sun was finishing its arc, and the light had turned the color of old copper. We were quiet for a while. I kept my eyes on the monitors. The 12 surgeons kept their position against the wall. The room made no sound except for the soft periodic tone of the equipment. My primary surgeon, she said after some time, has served my family for 30 years. He is the finest physician in the Reach. I believe that. And yet, I agreed. She was quiet again. I checked the latest readout. The aberrant compound in her blood was already showing a slower rate of increase. Too early to say it was working, but the right direction. In the Reach, she said, when a sovereign falls ill, the court withdraws to allow the judgment to proceed unobstructed. Those who intercede risk accusation of spiritual arrogance, the claim that one's own knowledge exceeds the order of things. I know, I said. You knew this when you crossed the room. Yes. She was watching me steadily now, her amber eyes tracking my face the way they had tracked the reception hall on that first evening, methodically, cataloging. But the expression had changed again. The confusion had drained out of it and left something else. Then you chose to commit spiritual arrogance on my behalf, she said. A guest, against the custom of your hosts, for a sovereign who owes you nothing and who had given you no instruction to do so. When you put it that way, I said, it does sound like bad manners. She was quiet for 3 full breaths. Then she said, very carefully in the precise Velhari way, it does not sound like bad manners. I looked at the monitor. Then I looked at her. The fever color was beginning to recede slowly, but visibly, the gray pulling back from the blue-black of her skin like a tide going out. I think it's working, I said. She looked at the ceiling again. After a moment she said, my surgeons will consider this a violation of the withdrawal protocol. Probably. I will tell them, she said carefully, that I countermanded the withdrawal, that I summoned you, that the responsibility is mine. I looked at her. You don't have to do that. I know I do not have to. Her amber eyes came back to me. You stayed when you did not have to. I will speak when I do not have to. This seems like a reasonable exchange. I didn't answer right away. The second sun finished its arc. The old copper light deepened toward something darker and quieter. The monitors kept their soft periodic tone. How are you feeling? I asked. Less certain that I am dying, she said. This is an improvement. It is. She was quiet one more time, and then she said something I have turned over in my mind many times since, on the long transit home and in the years that followed. She said it in Velhari, and she said it slowly, in the way the Velhari say something they are saying for the first time and are not sure the language yet contains the right shape for it. She said, I have ruled the Reach for 19 years. I have had surgeons and guards and advisors and allies. I have not had this. Whatever this is, I do not know the word for it in either of our languages. I thought about it. Where I come from, I said, we just call it staying. The monitors kept their tone. The light went quiet. In the morning, when the fever had broken fully and her 12 surgeons returned to find her clear-eyed and stable, and speaking calmly with the human medic who had spent the night in the chair beside her, no one in that room could explain exactly what had happened. I didn't try to explain it. Some things are simpler than their explanations. I had stayed because she was sick, and I knew how to help. By the time anyone thought to ask whether that was reason enough, she had already decided that it was.